Brandon Marianne Lee sat down with me for a new episode of Get Real with Kacey Kasem. You might know Brandon from her work with The Athletic. You could also know her from Her Fantasy Football, the podcast that she had with her sisters. We talk about her jump back into the fantasy football space, why her fantasy football ended, blasts from the past, motherhood, and a whole lot more. I had such a great time talking with Brandon, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy the conversation as well. You can follow Brandon on Twitter at BrandonHerFF. You can give me a follow at @DKCKasem and the show at GetReal_pod. This show is a member of the DAP network. Okay, and now here's the conversation with Brandon Marianne Lee. All right, Brandon, I'm so happy that finally get to sit down and talk to you like this one-on-one. Especially if you guys are listening and you don't know Brandon. I've known Brandon for a while, and she's been very instrumental in me and probably a ton of people that you respect out there. She's been instrumental in where we are now. So, Brandon, how are you doing? We'll start it off easy. How are you doing? Maybe.
Yeah, I'm okay. It's been a wild year for everyone. So I certainly am not special in that way, but yeah, things are good. I'm glad to be here with you. I mean, you were Her Fantasy Football's favorite fan. So we are really excited. And we were like, our favorite listener, Kacey, and you actually were our first person, because I think that it was the first or second year that they let people like with podcasts and media or whatever else, like one of their listeners could join, and you won the contest to do that. And we were like, yay, it was Kacey. So that, I believe, was your first time playing Scott Fishbowl too, right?
Yep, my very first time. We were looking at it, and I had Scott on the show a while back, and we were bringing that up. He brought it up because he loves that story about how, I got, Scott Fishbowl, whoa, and it's because of you guys. So it was super dope to, have that happen, and then to keep being in Scott Fishbowl every year after that.
Yeah, and there were so few, like it was much smaller. I mean, now it's a monster, right? It's like its own like planet. But back then, gosh, I can't even remember. I think there were like maybe 60 people. It was basically like what now a division is now, right? Like it wasn't even that, I don't think, but it was like, whoa, I can't believe this many people are all going to play together. And now it's just like, child's play. But back in the day, that was like the thing. So yeah, it's so weird, taking some time off and coming back to the space where I'm like, wow, I really have been here for a long time. Things have really changed.
Yeah, really, they have. And well, let's go back. And when you first started playing fantasy football, how did that come about? Go back to the origin story.
So I grew up, well, okay, we're gonna go way back.
Let's do it.
Born in Boulder, Colorado.
Gotcha.
My father played for the University of Colorado, so he was at Buffalo. And my mother, they got married within 8 months of knowing each other, I think. And yes, they're still together. So they're just one of those crazy couples that met, they knew it was it, and they just went for it. So, I was raised by a football family. We moved to Nebraska when I was 5. My dad had a job opportunity, or his job transferred him there. And it was the rival school at the time, the Huskers and the Buffs. And so it was a big rivalry. So and in my childhood, college ball was the big thing because of the Huskers, because Nebraska doesn't have a professional team, right? But we were always Denver Broncos fans. We moved back to Colorado when I was 14. I went to high school there, the entirety of it. And then I went to the University of Minnesota. So I went thousands of miles away for school. And my grandparents were originally from Minnesota, so they were always Vikings fans. So they were kind of my NFC team, and my Broncos, which are still the love of my life, were my AFC team. And so I'm sitting there in college, and for all you young people out there, we didn't do a lot of these things on the internet. There was no texting, by the way. I actually laugh with my husband because when we started dating, there was no such thing as texting. So when texting came out, I was like, ew, who would text their boyfriend? I'm always going to call. I mean, how impersonal. Oh my gosh, it was so dumb. But anyway, so point is here is that football was always a part of it. But when I was in college and away from my family, it just wasn't really, as much of a thing. I was on this thing. I was a theater major and I was on this thing called the call board, which was basically like a theater forum. Yes. Internet forum. Again, I'm going way old school here, people. And so some dude posts in this like sub thread and was like, hey, does anyone want to play fantasy football? I'm thinking about starting a league. Again, these are all theater people. So I respond with, I want to. Now, I don't know what fantasy football is. I have no idea, but I missed football and fantasy seemed like a nice word. So I thought maybe it was Dungeons and Dragons plus football. I wasn't too far off, actually. So I was like, I'll do it. And then I Googled what it was and I was like, oh, this looks right up my alley. So then I called my parents and I was like, hey, I'm going to do this thing. It's called like fantasy football. And I'm kind of excited. And my dad said, oh, honey, that's a lot of work. And I said, what are you talking about? So ends up my dad used to play fantasy football like in the 80s when they used to do it from the paper, like very old school. I had no idea that he played fantasy football. So he never knew what his scores were until like, a week later, basically. So then I said, well, they have it on the internet, Dad, now. It's the internet. And he's like, oh, you're going to have to do all the scoring yourself. And I mean, he was just totally off it. So then I said, why don't we do a family league? So I commissioned my family league. And then another dude in that same forum said, I'm also going to start a fantasy league, but mine's going to be free and the other dudes pay. And I was like, well, I want to join that one too. So I started with 3 fantasy football leagues in my first year of playing. And one of them, I was the commissioner. So I dove right in, which is kind of how I do everything. And I had a great time. It was, when was this? 2008, 7-ish? No, it was before that. No, it was 2007. Or maybe it was 2008, but it was the one where Kurt Warner was the backup. Do you remember? To Leinart.
Yeah, I wasn't playing fantasy football yet. So.
Yeah, you were a child. Everyone else here was a child too, and that's okay. And I remember he was my last pick of the draft, and I remember the guy who started this league said, "Of my first fantasy draft," he laughed and he goes, "You don't have to draft a backup quarterback." And I said, "Well, he's Kurt Warner, and I've seen him play football, and he's not a backup quarterback." And sure enough, like 2 days later, they announced that he was the starter, and then he went on to the Super Bowl. So, yeah, I mean, then I was hooked, right? So, I was 2nd, 3rd, and 5th, I believe, in the leagues at that time, and from then on, I have won in at least one of my fantasy leagues every year since then. I've just been obsessed. So that's how you do it, people. That's how you do it. And at the time, in Colorado, every state's a little bit different about how things go, but everyone is a Denver Broncos fan, male or female. Like you would never assume that someone is not a Broncos fan based on their gender at all or their sex or whatever. I mean, you would never, ever make that assumption. So I just assumed that there would be women in the space like they would also be playing fantasy football. I figured I was late to the party. Ends up, no, I was very early to the party. And so it's been a really interesting journey from that origin to now. And even now, obviously it's still underrepresentation. And I think that, I get asked all the time, like what the NFL and fantasy can do to entice, women to play. And I don't really know if I have great answers because I guess, no woman speaks for all women. I always find that so weird. And people are like, what do women think? I was like, I don't know. But it is intriguing because there are a lot of female identifying NFL fans that don't play fantasy. So there's still a long way to go, but it's been a fun journey so far.
Yeah, I swear, like every year I end up getting a couple new women who want to play and then a couple of women who want to fall off and don't want to play anymore, which is fine. It's great bringing in a new group of people to play. So you were talking about being in a family league and your sisters I'm guessing were in that family league. Is it still going on?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
and
all the time.
You guys all do you have any other siblings? We're about to get into the juicy stuff that you guys might be here for, but do you have any other siblings besides your 2 sisters who podcast with you?
No, okay. It's just us, three sisters. I'm the oldest. My sister Ashley is the middle, and Courtney is the youngest. And Yeah. So no, it's just us. And so, and again, this is also why I didn't realize that, being a woman would be so interesting, because in my house, it was all women except for my dad, and we all watched football. So it just was not a thing.
Well, that's awesome. And then you guys came together and created something special, something new, something that nobody had really witnessed before. So, can you tell me more about how Her Fantasy Football came together and why you decided that you guys needed to do that?
Yeah. Well, yeah, we were the first all-female fantasy sports podcast ever. And it was an idea my sister Ashley and I had. We were both kind of working jobs that we weren't happy with, or just were kind of dead ends, really. I don't want to say we were unhappy, but it was just kind of like, nothing was going on. And we're like, let's do something. And I was like, what if we do a podcast? And like, I don't even know if either of us really listened to podcasts really, but I was like, it would be good and we could just talk or whatever. And we're like, what should we talk about? I was like, well, what about fantasy football? I don't think I don't think enough people talk about that. I don't know if any women talk about that. And we were like, oh, I don't know. At the time, Courtney had just had a baby. So I just assumed she would not be interested because I figured she's exhausted. But no, she was on a walk, I think, with Ashley, and Ashley brought it up, and then she was like, well, I want it. And we were like, oh, okay, okay. And Courtney ended up being the host. Ashley was the editor. And then I kind of did like all the odds and ends. So I did all the business stuff and all the marketing and the Twitter account and, all that stuff. So that's kind of how it all worked out. But yeah, it ended up being, sisters. It's funny too, because people are always like, are they really your sisters? Like, well, why would I lie about that? Yes, we're all actually related. Some people brought up that there wasn't any diversity, and I was like, you're totally right. Actually, we're the worst with diversity because we have the same gene pool. We have none at all. And but yeah, we were all three very different and still are. And so I feel like if you listen to the show, you could tell who was talking and who wasn't. For a while, I was worried. I was like, well, our voices kind of sound alike. But when I listened back, I was like, no, I get it. So, but yeah, so that is how it started. And I don't think we realized we were the first at first. And then all of a sudden, people started contacting us and they were like, hey, I just heard your show. This is so different. And we were like, is it? I thought we were just talking about football, but ended up being really different. So yeah, it was a lot of fun.
And do you know what year that started?
2013, 14, 15.
Yeah, because it was 5 years, right? I think.
Yeah, I think it was 5 years. Yeah, and we stopped in 2019. Or was it 2018? So I think it's 2013. Because it was 2013. Yeah.
Okay, there we go. We got it.
Right. So, I mean, basically, the big problem was the time zone difference. So my sisters still live in Colorado, and I live in New York. And I'm sure that's one of the juicy questions is like, why did it stop? Well, it was like we had to record after 8 p.m. their time at the earliest. And a lot of times it was 9 or 10 their time, which was like midnight my time. Mm-hmm. And I got old. So there at the last season, I was falling asleep sometimes. I would literally be asleep in part of the show. And I probably shouldn't say that, but there were times where I was like, okay, wait, and we just couldn't get it together time-wise. It was hard. And it happens, but yeah, so that and then also, which I'm sure we'll get into, I, ended up having a family emergency in the fact that like, I found out I was trying to get pregnant for 4 years. And, I found out basically that I was like, I guess medically infertile. And I had to like do all this fertility treatments and all this other stuff. And, yeah, and it was because of a genetic thing that I carry. So it was all very shocking at the time, and it was just all over the place. So that was also why I kind of stepped away from the space, was when I found that out, because, this is a grind. I mean, we can talk, obviously, I'm sure you're going to ask me a lot about that, but this is not for the faint of heart. And you do so much, and it is so time consuming and all consuming. And a lot of it is unpaid labor, right? You're watching the games, you're doing the research, you're writing the articles, you're doing all these things. And even if you are getting paid occasionally for some of these things, the amount of time and effort you have to put in to be able to discuss these things. And at the time I was doing on camera, radio, podcasts, you name it, and guest appearances and blah, blah, blah. So I needed to know so much that I would be able to just drop stats at the drop of a hat. And also Twitter was out of control. I would have 50 plus notifications every time I opened my phone. And then people were such jerks about me not answering that. I just find at the end, I started being like, I just can't answer them. I'm just not going to. I can't. And none of that is paid. And I would spend at least, so let's put it this way. Let's say I put only 1 hour of Twitter in. It was always more than that. But let's say I do 1 hour a day. It's a 7-day-a-week job. That's 7 hours. That's a whole work day. Just doing Twitter, nothing else, just answering questions or talking or putting out things. Right.
Right on.
So yeah. Sorry, I'm like totally going all over the map.
No, this is so good because this is a podcast that honestly, it's just me doing it because you were talking about how each of you had a role and I'm doing all of it myself. So you being able to like help me out by answering a million questions all in that nice section. That's great for me. I promise. Because
I hope so.
You're so like,
why is she driving this train?
No, please do. You know more about yourself than I do. So, I mean, those are all gems, So, no, but when you guys were putting out the podcast, y'all were so groundbreaking and new. How did you spread the word and how were people finding the podcast?
Oh man, we did not do a very good job of it. People just kind of found it on their own usually. I mean, to be honest with you, because we weren't marketing people. We didn't have a platform. We didn't have whatever. Right. And basically we tried to just make friends with everybody. So a lot of people that were bigger than us, like a lot bigger, would mention us or ask me, or any of my sisters or whatever to be on a podcast or whatever else. And I lived in New York, so I was able to meet people in person too. Location matters. So at the time, and also I always put in the effort to like go to these fantasy events, do the thing, make sure to do FaceTime things. And I did for a lot of years, I just said yes to everything. Yes, yes, yes. You just got to keep doing it. And that really helped too, because once someone heard one of our voices, just because it was so different on another program, any program, they'd Google us, so that was a lot of the promotion, was doing this like outreach with other people. And I still suggest that to people. It's probably the number one way, is to just like say yes, engage with people that you really like, and just continue in that way. So that people are like, oh, I think I heard you on that thing, so it's interesting. It's really, and then I started working in other jobs in the space. So I started doing this I'm going to put quotes around this, full time. And that also helped, right? Because I always said I was also a member of her fantasy football. So then people would be like, oh, I'm going to check that out. And then they'd be like, oh my gosh, it's like, there's 3 of them. And that's interesting. So yeah.
And it was so awesome to see you guys as well, because you guys would go on and do live streams and things like that. I mean, you can go back and look at the old videos and listen to the old podcasts. I mean, you can go back. Today I actually did pull up the last episode on YouTube just to try to see if I could pick your brain and see if you remembered anything from the last episode about predictions and things of that nature that you had to say for the 2018 season. But we'll get into that in a little bit.
I don't remember. I was probably sleeping again because it was late.
Well, you know what?
No.
Don't
look too closely at those videos.
Yeah. Well, but it was really cool that you guys did that and kind of had like a fan base that would come in and watch you guys do it live and everything. So what made you guys decide that you wanted to kind of connect in that way?
Because that's how we knew how to record it. They didn't have all these programs. Like here we are on this thing here, StreamYard. This did not exist. We were I mean, so we connected via YouTube so that we could see each other's faces, like we had talked earlier, like that it's easier to see that, and then you don't talk over each other and whatnot. This is especially important when you're like working with your siblings because it's very easy to talk over your siblings.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
And also just really tick off your sibling too, and by accident because you may not need to, but like you're like, "Rah,
Yeah.
rah." So that was why we did it. We actually felt bad for the people because we never actually had an exact time that we came on. So people would just see that we were live and then they would just like come on because again, it was all over the map. And so people would be, up really late. They'd like log in and be like, "Hey, what's up?" But yeah, I have no idea what my predictions were for the 2018 season. I'm very intrigued.
Okay, well then here's the thing. Okay, so you were all about a team in the preseason. You were obsessed with this team and their coach. Can you remember the team? You thought that one of their wide receivers was going to be the rookie of the year in
Was it the Rams?
2017. Yes, in 2017, you thought that Cooper Kupp was, strong. Yeah,
I'm the original Cooper Kupp stan. I don't know if people remember that.
It definitely was the Rams. You were all about the Rams because you guys were putting out your boldest calls that you liked from the previous year and everything. So,
and is that the year they went to the Super Bowl?
I'm not. Honestly, I'm not good with dates.
I'm gonna look that up. I think
you better, because then you can be like, look. Well, here's the problem. No, here's the problem with because here's the problem with the 2018. You actually said a different. Oh, they did? Well, you also said that a different team was going to win the Super Bowl. Do you know which team that was? And it was very bold. Like maybe too bold.
I do that. I do that sometimes.
But you said I'll tell you what you said after you.
Well, I just want to say, first of all, that was the year that the Rams went to the Super Bowl.
It was.
So the good news is that one claim was good. So I can't wait to hear how off base the other one was. It's got to be someone like the Browns or something ridiculous.
No, you said it was a homer pick, and so you went with the Broncos. You said the Broncos were going to win the Super Bowl.
Oh yeah.
You were, and something. I think they only won 6 games. I'm Philip Lindsay, though, he had a spectacular year. That was the year that Philip Lindsay was like.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let me see here. Who even was the
I took all these notes.
Quarterback that year.
It was it Keenum?
It may have been Keenum. Yeah, I got too high on Keenum. I was really excited.
Oh yeah, you were. Yeah, it was Case Keenum.
Yeah.
And
I was like, yeah, he'll be great. Yeah.
But, I mean, oh well, you said, actually, I don't know if you said they were going to win the Super Bowl. Let's take it back. I can't remember what I ate for breakfast. Isn't that the old people saying? That's what I'm saying right now. But maybe you just said they were going to make it to the playoffs, but they didn't make it to the playoffs either. So, I mean,
no, they were trash.
But the Rams is what we're going with here. And you got who? I mean, you knew who was going to be the stud. You knew who the rookie of the year was going to be in 2018. Your sister knew, and so did your other sister. So, I mean, but there was somebody else. Let's see. Okay, so that was, I'll give it to you because it's easy, with Saquon Barkley. Okay, you guys were all in on Saquon. I don't know how you guys feel about Saquon now. I don't know how you feel about Saquon at the moment.
I mean, I feel like he's injured like everybody else. I feel like running back is really tragic right now. So I think people are needlessly singling out Saquon when really we could probably go down the whole list. And other than Derrick Henry, it's just tragic.
Tragic.
I shouldn't say that.
It is.
Ezekiel Elliott's still good. I mean, there's some good ones, but I mean, like, Antonio Gibson's hurt, Nick Chubb's hurt. I mean, it is out of control. And then we have all these buys this week. So this particular week is just running back sadness, but it makes you really glad to have Mike Davis.
It really,
I mean, like, at least I can get 10 points.
I got him in my lineup. Yep. I've got, I drafted Christian McCaffrey for the first time, like, this year. I've been saying no, and that.
If you got number 1, you drafted Christian McCaffrey. And by the way, whenever he does play, he's a 25-point dude. We're not wrong.
No, it's just,
It just doesn't.
Things don't really go. Yeah, I mean, it happens. But there's another guy who's doing really well this year, and you were in on him. You said if he had the chance to start, that he was going to be something special. He was another guy that you had kind of up there when we were talking about guys you had high expectations for. And he's a quarterback. And I don't really know how to give you too much information other than, like, he's one of the, I don't know. I don't want to give too much away, but let's just say that they have had their own running back issues this season, starting before the season even started. Then the backup got hurt.
And then the backup got hurt. The backup running back or quarterback?
Yeah, the running back. So he's on a team where the running backs have just been cycling. In fact, right now,
Lamar Jackson?
yes, Lamar Jackson. You are big time on Lamar Jackson as well.
Because he wasn't supposed to start because of
Flacco. You were like, as long as Flacco's out of the way, because they're completely different people. And you were talking about, So
can you imagine that that's the sentence we said? That he probably isn't going to start because of Joe Flacco.
Because of Joe Flacco, and they needed
what a time to be alive.
Oh my gosh. When I was listening back, I was just like, oh my God, there's so much that you like. There's so many players now that you guys haven't y'all weren't able to talk about because your show ended. Is there any players right now that you wish that like you guys could all sit down and have fun conversations, whether they're like positive conversations or there's like a player that you guys would probably have a nice back and forth on?
I mean, I know so many. I mean, there's sometimes where I'm like, gosh, I wish we could do this again. And truly, if it wasn't the time zone difference, I'm sure we would. There's no doubt. But now, especially because I have a kid and I'm 40, like midnight shows ain't happening. It's not happening. Yeah. I mean, we'd have a lot to say about running quarterbacks. We'd probably just laugh about Jalen Hurts every week. Really,
that'd be okay with me as a Cowboys fan. So
I mean, and I talked about it today on the podcast that I'm on for The Athletic. I just said, he really is everything that is wrong with quarterback scoring personified for fantasy football, because you watch the game and you're like, this is trash, and he's got 25 points. It is difficult to digest, but I said this on the show too. But I won many a fantasy football championship with Blake Bortles. So it's all about how scoring works. These are the rules. So you need to act accordingly. You can't be like, but wait, this other quarterback is better. Yeah, that's a fact. No one's disagreeing with you, but you're playing a game that has certain rules and you have to pay attention to them. So Jalen Hurts it is. So we'd probably talk about that a lot, because we talked a lot about Blake Bortles that way. So it'd be the same. We'd probably, I was, and I still am, big, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, like these other quarterbacks that are actually on winning teams. So we can be excited about that. I mean, also old people. I love old players that everyone underestimates that you can get for value just over and over again. Emmanuel Sanders is everywhere because the guy just keeps scoring fantasy points. It's intriguing to me how ageism plays a role in fantasy football. And I'm about ready to do it. I hope no one from my Dynasty League listens to this, but I'm going to start trading for all these old people, because I have Derrick Henry in my Dynasty League and I'm number 4 right now out of 14 teams. And I'm going to go for it. Like, this is my year to win, and I'm just going to go get all the old people that are going to help me out.
Do it.
Are you old? I want you on my team if you are still starting in the National Football League. So I did this with Larry Fitzgerald over and over again. I don't know how many times I got him for a value because people were done with him. So, her fantasy football was very big on we didn't realize they were hot takes because we didn't listen to anything else. So we were busy. So we didn't realize no one agreed with us. We were just making assessments. We were like, yeah, we totally love old person number 5. And people would be like, oh my gosh,
old person number 5.
Why would you draft this person? And then they ended up being, running back 15 on the year. And I'm like, yeah, see, look. And I got him in like the 10th round.
Frank Gore over here,
Oh, exactly. No, but, Larry Fitz. Hey, I mean, some of these people will never go away.
There are so many players that I look at and I'm like when you brought up Blake Bortles, I'm like, man, I drafted a lot of Blake Bortles, but who was I listening to? And then, but that's the thing, right?
You won with him. And
yes, exactly.
It's ugly, but that's how the quarterback position's played.
Exactly. And then you brought up Emmanuel Sanders, and like he was on that Broncos team that we were talking about earlier. Like he's been around, but he gets the job done, and you can rely on him to get you a certain amount. So
Yeah.
yes, and the strategy of everything, like you guys were talking strategy before people were really talking strategy, because it was just your strategies. This is how you guys go about drafting. And do you think that, like, when I was listening, you were talking about how you like drafting towards the end of the draft? Do you still feel that way, or is there a certain spot in the draft that you like over another?
Yeah, I like the turn either side really. Because I like to strategize on with a double up, where I'm picking
Mm-hmm.
2 players at a time instead of 1.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I typically do like having 2 top tier people because there's inevitably someone that I can get right away in that second round that I think is a first rounder that other people didn't. So I usually do like that. But I feel like one of the things that, not to like toot her fantasy football's horn that again hasn't been here
Do
for
it.
3 years, but our cheat sheet was really revolutionary. And I actually still make my own version of it to use because it makes sense. And I'm thinking about doing it again next year and like actually
Do it,
publishing it.
please.
It's a really clean way to draft with tiers, but like not overthinking it. And we marked it so that if it's full point PPR, you move a couple people, you move someone up 1 tier, because that's typically where the difference is really just 1 tier. There are very few JD McKissicks that are just straight up like jumping 3 tiers. But yeah, and it's really, that's probably my favorite thing that we did was the tiered cheat sheet. And we split up who did the rankings for each position. So, and we drew them every year. It was fun. We drew the teams that we covered and the positions that we covered on the show. So that was fun. But yeah, I do still like, yeah. And we talk a lot about strategy because that's how you win. I'm not trying to be dismissive about. I mean, it is really how you win. You need to, and we were the first ones to say, check your league scoring. It is the number one thing that people don't do. And then they don't realize that they have massive penalties for turnovers or big bonuses, so that the high yardage people, that's one of the things a lot of people are doing right now, is that passing yardage is getting bonuses to kind of even out that running quarterback benefit that you get. So you got to check that out. When do your waivers go? How much fab do you have? Look at how much fab everyone else is spending, so that you're not making some ridiculous claim when you could have gotten them for $7 and you put in for 45. It's important to look at those things so that you can be better at the game. So yeah, I mean, that is still a big part of it. And whether it's at the beginning or the end, strategize based off of where you are if you can. Some people, some leagues don't tell you where you're drafting until right before, and then you just kind of go with it. But and I'm in those too, and that's fun. I'll tell you one thing I don't like though, and I said it on her fantasy football time.
Please do.
Slow drafts.
Oh yeah, they're kind of annoying.
I like, do people not have lives? I don't understand. How do you? And then they're like, we have a whole 8-hour clock. Well, first of all, everyone complains if you take the full 8
They
hours.
do.
So it's like, don't tell me I have 8 hours, and then at like 4 hours, you're like, oh my gosh, don't you know it's your turn? And then 2, okay, yes, I have 8 hours, but who doesn't work at least 8 hours? So if I get up at 10, at 9 a.m., I'm not all of a sudden just ready at 8 hours necessarily, because I may be with clients or whatever else. I don't know. Anyway, and also I don't have my cheat sheets with me.
Right.
And so then I'm like, okay, who's my team? And then inevitably I forget someone. Anyway, I only do the long drafts for Scott Fishbowl and the eliminator ones, like the ones that are for like a cause.
Right.
Is pretty much it for me. I don't do them anymore. I don't find them as fun. Let's have fun.
Let's have fun. Yeah.
Right.
I yeah. I am so on the fence about them because in some of my leagues, they're basically like fast traps because we're all ready to go. But yeah, the lives thing is, I'm so happy that you said that about we have lives because lately I've been feeling like, how is everybody doing everything and I can't do the things that everybody else is managing to make look so easy, right? And I know there are other people out there that feel that way because I brought it up on Twitter and a lot of people were talking to me. A lot of people were like, oh my gosh, same way. So you took a break from fantasy football for life, for life.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
how, how was that transitioning from, you were doing this and in a full-time capacity and this was really something that you were doing all the time to having to go into dealing, you got real life stuff going on.
Yeah. So, um, at the beginning of no, at the end of the 2017 season, middle of the 2017 season, it was week 8 because it's always week 8. Week 8, just be gentle to your fantasy analysts in week 8. It is when everyone cracks. Now that there's an extra game, it might be week 9, but I'm telling you, every week 8 was just a big, where I was like, oh my gosh, how much more of the season's left, and it's so intense. I was working on, I don't even know what article or video or whatever it was, and I was just typing, and I looked at my bank account, and we had like no money, and fantasy pay, unless you're a big dog, is it's a thing. And I took a moment, I pushed my chair back, I took a deep breath, and I was just like, wow. And then I said, I pushed myself back in and I Googled real estate courses. I found a place on Groupon and I left the house and I started a class. I said, that's it. I have to have a big girl job. I need to make money. I'm at the end of my, I was in mid 30s. I'm in my mid 30s. I just something has to give. I need to at least have a backup. And so I really love real estate. So I was already kind of starting to walk out the door then because of needing to make money. I don't, my parents, are lovely middle-class parents, but I do not have parents bankrolling me. And also like I'm in my mid 30s. Even if I did, I really should kind of get it together. And so I went, I did that. And then 2018, that's when, I just couldn't keep doing the late nights. We were trying to have a baby and I just knew, like, even in 2017, I was like, something is wrong. I'm going to have to make money to make this particular dream come true. I could just feel it. So then in 2018, I just cranked through, but it was just too much doing everything at once. And at that time I was working for like 4 different organizations. Like I was like all over, and they were big. It was like NFL, CBS, Fantasy Alarm, The Athletic. I think there was someone else too. I feel bad. I've missed someone. So it was so intense. Like again, week 8, I just kind of went into like survival mode, and I was like, I can't do it like this again. So I thought, okay, I'm only going to do 1, maybe 2 people next year, right, in 2019. And I was in the midst actually of writing an article for Bob Harris, and I'll never forgive myself for this. And that's when I got the call that basically there's like a weird test that you take that I should have taken years ago, but my doctor never gave it to me, that like is kind of an indicator of how many eggs you have left. And I basically had the amount of like a 50-year-old woman. It was over. And I couldn't, it was almost like a schism. Like I just started crying and I couldn't stop crying for like a week. So I had to tell Bob that I was like, I can't do this article because I like physically can't function. I called everyone that I'd worked for and I said, I have to stop fantasy. I'm sorry. I'm taking the year off. And I just had to kind of reassess everything. It was a weird time because also then I found out it was because of this genetic disease that I carry. I don't have, but just even being a carrier affected it. So actually, this is how it's been my whole life. I didn't know that. And then at this point, I'm 37, almost 38. And that's, the big drop off is 38. So everything went crazy. Then COVID happened. Okay, so we're going into this 2020. So that was 2019. So we're going to 2020. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so we go into lockdown in the middle of March. And I'm in New York City. So when I say lockdown, I mean legit lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
Found out that I was pregnant naturally on April 12th. And I was like, oh my gosh. The first time I left my home was to go to the appointment to verify that I was pregnant. And I got into an Uber. And at the time, they just saran wrapped everything. Okay, so I'm in this car that's like completely saran wrapped. And I'm trying to get to the Upper West Side, which is where my appointment was. I live in Astoria, which is in Queens, but it's like right on the water. And we're going over the bridge. It's 9 a.m. Okay, my appointment's at 9:15. We're the only car. It's like an apocalypse.
Oh,
There's
wow.
no one in New York City at 9 a.m. rush hour on a Tuesday. And we go through, and I was just like, what is happening? We get there. It's like everyone's like, again, like I'm basically like saran wrap. And at this point, remember PPP they didn't have. My husband wasn't allowed to go to any appointments with me this entire pregnancy. It is just, and at this point, I can't even believe that I'm pregnant because it's been, whatever. And so, ended up, it was great. My son is here. Everything worked out. Spoiler alert, it's fine. But like at the time, it was just like, whoa. And then, COVID's going on. And when we got to the season, I was like, well, I could do it, but this is just too much. It's too much. And I'm going to have a baby. I was due December. Well, first I was due like December 21st. And then I ended up being due December 13th because my child is ginormous. And then anyway, but I knew that was going to be during the season. And I said, I don't want to deal with that. And I'm probably going to be, whatever. So that's why I took off that following year.
Mm-hmm.
And then this year I'm just kind of like pitter pattering in. I'm just with The Athletic right now, which is great. Nando DeFino is kind of the executive editor of everything. And he has always been a good friend and mentor. And he's very understanding. I actually had to take 2 weeks off because my son got RSV, which is like a respiratory infection, and he has children. So he was like, take 2 weeks. Don't I'm going to have someone else cover you, whatever. And so, yeah, but that it was weird, but it was so sudden. It was like I couldn't think about it because everything just kind of happened and I had to focus. And it was just like, all right, block it out. And it wasn't like I got sick of it or whatever, but it was just like there were medical, like I could not do it all. And especially when you're doing this on a more like large scale,
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot of time and energy. And I was doing a lot of late nights, early mornings, whatnot. And I couldn't do that anymore. So now I'm just doing, very simple. I'm just doing the mailbag. I'm doing a podcast 1 day a week. And it's great to just start dipping my toe back in. But as you know, and as a lot of other, content creators know, this is a very intense industry because not nothing, but pretty close to nothing is evergreen. So you constantly have to churn out brand new content. And now everyone is obsessed with lacing everything with 40,000 stats from 40,000 websites. And you just, it's gotten to be where even Derrick Henry, you have to explain in such painstaking detail why he's awesome that it can really suck it out of you, right? And I think that one of the things I've done is I've really reevaluated what's important and what isn't, and it's okay, and I can be right and I can be wrong. And then also I just think sometimes it's pragmatism. I had a lot of James Robinson on my teams because I know he's good at football, and I didn't really need. Everyone's like, but Etienne's there. Okay, yeah, but he's fantastic at football, and people just got lucky. No, I watched the games. I am aware of how good he is. I knew that if he was given the opportunity, he would continue being that good. And for a while there, I was getting him in double-digit rounds. So sometimes you don't need to have everything, diced out like that. Now, I'm not against stats. I'm not one of those, people. That's ridiculous. The stats are amazing. I just think that we make our articles way more difficult to write than they need to be sometimes. That's all I'm saying, is that just I don't need 40 stats to tell you why you should start Derrick Henry. I just don't. I need one, and it's called he's the best. And then we move on. And
no, for real. No, you know what? I'm so glad that you're back to even if it's not because listen, it's like so different. The stats and everything that's never going to be anything that I am even thinking about being all in. That's just not my thing. If somebody else does it a really awesome way, then that's cool. But like, thank you for doing the research so I can look and say, hey, that backs up that he's really good. But like, I already knew he was really good.
Well, and when did the stat line of how many fantasy points they scored become so unpopular? I
don't know because I still try to throw that, like.
I mean, it's like the Jalen Hurts thing. Okay, I get it. There's a lot of things that he's really, really terrible at statistically, totally. But he scored 25 fantasy points the other day,
and that's all that really matters for fantasy.
And so we can evaluate why that is and change our scoring if you would like. But this year, in your current format, this is what it is. And sometimes, someone could not make sense to you. But if they're getting all the targets, then, and they're like, well, I think the talent will win out because, and then, they give me some sort of, college, projection stat line. And, and that's great. But if they're not touching the ball, then it just doesn't matter. So
opportunity. Yeah.
That's why I have so much Najee Harris. I was like, the dude is the dude.
Yeah.
And after week 1, when people freaked out, I was like, give me your Najee Harris. He was on the field more than anyone else. He was the only running back that played in 100% of the team snaps. The only one in the National Football League in week 1.
Have you seen any, since you were talking about changing your settings and everything, have you seen any sort of setting that's come into play that maybe overcompensates for something? Because I think it was Andy Behrens I had on who was like, I am not a fan of PPR, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, I mean, PPR has been around for so long. It's like ubiquitous, right? So I think, it just kind of is what it is. I think half point PPR is the more accurate way if you wanted to be more like the National Football League. That I think is it. I also like being called a manager rather than an owner because I actually feel like we are managers. I think that's kind of cool. I can't believe we didn't think about that ahead of time, but I kind of like that. In terms of the stats that I think have gone overboard, I don't know if I care about first downs. That one is a little weird to me. I wish there was a way to credit interceptions differently, not to give Patrick Mahomes' mom too much credit on this one, but she's kind of right. Like sometimes it's like, is this really, or also like a Hail Mary interception? Like, I think that kind of stinks. I also think if you take a knee, I think that stinks that it comes as like negative yardage, I mean, things like that, but nothing's worse than the fumble into the end zone and then it comes out.
Yes. Oh yeah. I mean, for sure.
Someone else's ball. That's the worst. That's the absolute worst rule in the National Football League, but that's not a fantasy thing. But yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. I have some weird, leagues with defensive scoring. And I think that's kind of a riddle I haven't figured out. I just play defenses that are playing bad teams and I just go with that.
Yeah.
Works like a charm.
I like
People are always like, what about this defense for the season? And I'm like, I don't do it like that.
Yeah, I stream them. Don't even like, exactly. Like, because whatever. That's a whole different.
I mean, but that's strategy again, right?
It is strategy, and I enjoy it. And when it works out, of course, sometimes it doesn't, and then it comes back to bite you. But whatever, or you end up streaming a guy or a team that ends up doing well for multiple, and then you can just play them the entire time, and that worked out for you.
Yeah, totally. And the thing is, like, also we always say this on Her Fantasy Football too. If you play with kickers, please pay attention to them.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to play with kickers, then don't.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with that either. But like
Right.
the idea that you have 9 starters and you don't pay attention to 1/9 of them is just very weird to me.
So, what do you think about people who like shame people for playing with kickers or vice versa? People who are like, these people that shame people for wanting to play football, fantasy football, the way that they want to play. I don't
It's
know.
absurd. Who cares? I don't understand caring about what other people do pretty much across the board,
Yeah.
to be frank. But but when it comes to
Yeah.
kickers and
Right.
kickers, I really, really don't care. But I'm just an advocate for knowing your league settings. Again, if your league settings have a kicker, get it together. Don't be playing a kicker that stinks.
Right.
I always find it so interesting. And by the way, if you play with a kicker right now, go to your league, go to all players, sort by season points, and see which of your league mates has not paid attention to their kicker. And they're playing some kicker that's like on page 2 of that. They're out there and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
You should target those people for a trade. Those people are just not paying attention. It's actually like a foolproof deal. They're just not even paying attention. They don't care. Get whatever good players they have. Go do it right now.
I wrote that down because that's great. Yeah, I do the same thing with kickers that I usually do with the defenses, right? So I look and yeah, but there's different ways to play and everything. So you were talking about dynasty. Are you in a lot of dynasty leagues, or are you in a few dynasty leagues?
I'm only in one now.
Okay.
I gave up some of them. That was one of the things that I did when things were going downhill and I had to just pull out of fantasy in general. I pulled out of my dynasty leagues except for one, and that one actually was started and it was named after our late Mike Tagliere. So he started it when we were in Pro Football Focus together and we were doing a podcast together. And yeah, it's a great group of guys other than me. And it's the only one that I kept, and I kept it because of Mike. And that was, of course, years ago before everything tragically happened. So yeah, but that's the only one that I'm still in.
Well, I mean, you have a good reason to be in that one. And, Mike,
Yeah.
God, that whole situation, I just, I don't want to get into it too much here because but it does suck. And it's just, Tabby, and your heart goes out to the entire family and all of his friends. And
yeah,
that's another one that, like, when I first started doing this stuff was like, you're doing that. I listened to some of your podcasts, and that just makes your entire life. So
yeah. And I think that it's just also like a reminder that we're all people, which is kind of what your show is about.
right.
And so I think that there are a lot of people that get very riled up now on Twitter. Fantasy Twitter is also its own thing now that I just I completely checked out on. And that's not my thing, but you can get really riled up and you can kind of get, whatever, but these are like real people. And again, most of them are doing the Twitter thing for free. So,
Yes.
just be kind to each other. These are, legit people.
For real. Be kind. For real. Just be kind. Just be kind. That's all.
Right?
It's really not hard. And yeah, you can make somebody's day if you're just kind. Just be kind. So
yeah. Yeah. Like I just retweeted some dude who said to buy high on Mark Andrews. And I thought it was such a great point because people always talk about buying low on people. And I'm like, dude, buying high is a winning strategy.
Another one that I need to write.
Yeah, like it's okay to buy high on a dude with the kind of, and he's just listed all the numbers where he's great, right, in terms of his opportunity and his target share and things like that. And I was like, yeah, listen to this dude, whatever. And then he responded with like, wow, yeah, thanks for retweeting. And then I was like, oh, I need to do that more often because I want to do that more often. I just I'm tired, but I will try to wake up a little bit. This whole show is about my sleep patterns. No, but I realized that I was like, oh yeah, no, I should totally do that because it makes other people's day. And I was really just saying like, good point. Yeah, totally winning strategies. So, Yeah, so just, be kind. And it doesn't necessarily mean you have to share things, but certainly don't just like tear people down. I find that just so weird. But
It is weird.
yeah,
We're
that's
mature now. We're you're 40, I'm 37.
right.
But
We're old broads, so we're like,
yeah,
just
that's
be
us.
nice, you big jerk.
Hey. But it's really funny too, though. So you were talking about evergreen, and I do this podcast because it doesn't really have to be evergreen. Yeah, I mean, or it is evergreen. Like it'll last for.
Yeah.
I was talking to you about how it's similar to like Matt Harmon had backyard banter, and it was awesome because he was talking. He got I can go back and listen to that and see that these people back in the day they felt the same way I do. So it's cool to be able to
Mhm.
put that out and share stories. But like your story's super awesome because I was such a fan of your podcast and your sisters and everything. Like, how did that feel to know that you had like people out there that were listening in and were like huge fans of you guys?
Oh, well, it was so sweet. And, but we became fans of the fans, if you will. I mean, again, like we would bring you up on the show,
Yeah.
and we,
And
we
that made our
liked,
day too. Whenever
yeah,
I heard my name, I'd be like, oh my goodness, it's the coolest thing ever.
it was really fun. And it was such a connection to have with people. And it was really great. And I still, feel that way when I see certain names, and like, when I'm like kind of tiptoeing back and people be like, "Hey, Brandon, and nice to see you back a little bit." And I'm like, "Oh, thank you." So it makes our days too,
Hmm.
and that's what's really great. And and then there's always going to be, weirdos out there. And I think that it just like is a good reminder too that like they're the minority.
Yeah.
And um especially after like everything that's been happening in the world and everything else, and the internet just makes everything feel so quicksandy, right? That you just
Hmm.
can't get out sometimes. That it's a good reminder that there are people that care, that you matter, and that's good. And I just want to say that it's the other way too, that like the people that you're listening to care that you're listening, like you matter to them too. And I think that's important to remember.
And like people like me who look to you as a mentor and as inspiration for things and trying to, I just do this for fun. I'm not trying to do anything like crazy or special with it, but it's just fun to be able to like put my words into how I feel about fantasy football. And I was talking about it anyway, so why not, right? But how does it
Totally.
feel to like know that you had this impact on so many people?
Oh, that's so sweet. Well, um uh, it's I hope that um more mm, diverse voices continue to come forward, and that they keep getting elevated, and that we keep um, hearing that. And I don't mean that to be disparaging towards any, 30-year-old white dudes out there. My husband's in his 30s and white and a dude, and I'm all in. Okay. Like I'm a fan.
There you go.
Um, but I do think that I was very surprised when I started how quote unquote different I am still, right?
Hmm.
Um, and so I just like, maybe it's just me, but I just like hearing different opinions. One of the things about like, not to bring up Mike and the kind of like,
No, go
nature of
ahead.
that, but
Hmm.
when um he passed, and I, obviously made a comment about how upsetting it was to me as I considered him a friend.
Hmm.
People kept saying like, "Oh, I loved how you and Mike used to really go at it on the podcast." And it's so funny. You guys are always like on the different side of the coin or whatever. I never thought of it like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was like, oh, I guess he
Yeah.
did like Jordan because I liked him so much. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
love having people have different opinions from me that I
Mhm.
never considered it going at it at all. I was like, yeah, fun. And so, and it was the same thing with the athletic podcast. So people were like, oh, yeah, you and Chris really got into it, Chris Vaccaro. And I was like, did we? Oh, I just thought we were having a conversation.
Yeah,
And
right?
so I think we've lost the art of hearing voices unlike our own and being happy for that. So
Mhm.
when I say diverse, I don't even mean necessarily in this like, kind of geopolitical, whatever. I'm saying like literally someone different than you with a
Mhm.
different opinion. And even though her fantasy football was all of us with the same DNA, we still had a lot of different opinions.
Right. Yeah.
And it was okay. And so I just keep hoping that different people come through and I guess that's the anti-group think. I know that was a big thing on fantasy Twitter for a while here. I was like, oh, everyone's just doing group thing. And
Yeah,
and
right.
and yeah. And I just don't think like um I I I will never forget like going on these shows and they'll ask me a question about some dude and I'll just say like oh, what was his name? Oh, he was oh gosh, this is why I'm just getting old. The quarterback for the Browns, who everyone was like Manziel.
Oh, Johnny
Oh my gosh.
Manziel.
So I remember when he was having his first start. It was like week 15 or 14, okay, of the season. And everyone was going to start him. They were pulling like Aaron Rodgers style, Tom Brady's, whatnot, and they were going to put in Johnny Manziel. This is it. This is kind
This
of like
is it.
Justin Fields, right? So
Yeah.
this is the one. This is it. And I was on Sirius. I came on. It was actually
Mhm.
Lando's show. And they were like, and it was Pat Mayo, who's also on there, and Corey Parsons. And they were like, okay, so let's talk about Johnny Manziel. So, everyone's going to start him. And I was like, wait. No one's starting him. Like this time I was so I was laughing. I was like, who would start him? And this is your playoffs. We don't know anything about this guy. We don't know
Right?
anything. And everyone was like, it was the biggest hot take of the century. And I had no idea. And so that's why you want different people. Because
Yeah.
and listen, I'm wrong too, but like in this case, I was just like practical. I was like, no, you start Aaron Rodgers. Why would you pull Aaron Rodgers with Johnny Manziel? So it's just like
Right.
there is such a benefit to people thinking differently, even if it's just every once in a while. And I just encourage people to kind of get back into that groove of like learning how to talk to people that don't have the same point of view and it not being considered an argument. It's just, oh, interesting. That's an interesting point. Oh, okay. And I think that that's what these different voices are. They're just different points, and we can just be interested and not offended and just like have a good time and learn and be right and wrong because it's just a game. And then and that's why we're here. Like let's play the game. Let's have fun. Let's be interested and interesting and then, let's do this. That's kind of my philosophy on life.
This is so good for my soul right now to hear you say this stuff. Okay. Yeah. I yes. We do need to start getting more into that. And I see people arguing with each other on Twitter about their take. I think this guy, and here's all the stats. Why? Well, here's all this. Instead of saying, like you said, oh, that's an interesting point, because obviously, I mean, they're making a point, whether it's interesting or not. I don't know. But to argue back and forth and then be like, mad at somebody now because their stats don't matter, but yours do. I don't know.
I know.
It
It
is.
it's
It,
weird.
it's
But
so
we've
weird.
normalized that kind of weird
Yeah.
behavior. We
Yeah.
we believe that if you have a different opinion, it's it is somehow making my opinion invalid. I think people are very sensitive to that. So if
Hmm.
you have a different take on a dude,
Yeah.
then there must be something wrong with me. I think people are just sensitive actually. So I try to view it like that. Like I try to have
Okay.
empathy
Yeah.
because I think that people are just super sensitive and they feel like someone's calling them out. That's the new thing, right? Don't call me
Yeah.
out.
Don't call me
Well,
out.
I'm not calling you out. I just have a different opinion. And I think, yeah, I wish we just started normalizing that. I also wish we could start normalizing people changing their opinion when presented with new information.
Yes.
Like, okay, like I didn't get a lot of Jamar Chase in my life because it freaked me out that he had a year off of football and then he was making comments about white stripes on footballs. And I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. I don't like this. Okay. And also because I didn't like that 3 Bengals wide receivers were getting drafted so high. I was like, no way all 3 of these dudes make it. So I just stayed away from all 3. I was like, nope, nope,
Yeah.
nope. And I was wrong. Jamar Chase has been great, right? And I have no problem saying that. I
Right.
got no problem saying that. It's okay. And I think we just I think we don't teach people to be confident enough to be like, yeah, I was wrong and it's okay and I'm sorry or not even I'm sorry. I mean, obviously not like sorry, you know, that I had a
I
bad
can't
take, but
control
you know,
everything, you know, like
but like, you know, I think, I'm trying to be chicken soup for my own soul here. So I'm glad it's for you too, Kacey, because
thank you.
the
No,
only thing
for
I
real.
don't like about this show, to be honest with you, Kacey, just to be honest, is that I don't get to hear enough about you or talk about you. And I know that that's not what this is about, but I feel so rude because all I've wanted to do is
No.
ask you counter questions, but I know how this
But
works, so I'm just talking.
you know what? I don't mind the occasional question. No, it is a podcast about you. There's going to be an episode that involves me. So I've been talking. Well, my sister wanted to interview me, and Russ, Dynasty Outhouse, wanted to interview me. So, wow, I didn't know I was so in demand. So I don't know. We're going to figure something out. So,
Well,
and
maybe
you
I'll
can
send
learn
in a
more about
listener
me.
question
There
because I'm
you
a fan.
go. That'd be dope. I would
There you go.
enjoy that. I would enjoy that so much. So we're gonna continue asking you questions. So you, let's talk about the baby because that is so awesome. I'm so happy for you, and you know, it's when I found out, it just brought a smile to my face. Liz Loza had
Oh.
said something, but not brought your name up. Just said that there was somebody in the fantasy football space, and I'm like, well, there's not that many women in the space, so let's kind of do
Yes, someone has a bun in the oven,
who is it?
and
So I
it's
was really
not
hoping
Matthew
it was
Berry.
you. No,
No,
it was
yeah.
not Matthew Berry. So I was hoping it was you, and when I found out that it was super awesome. So how has becoming a mother been?
Well, I'm super lucky because my baby is a super easy kid. He was not easy at first. He had colic, which is like the crying for at least 3 hours every day kind of thing straight and they're inconsolable when they're really little. And then around 3-ish months, they grow out of it. And he was a champ. He grew out of it at like week 10. So he was a little ahead of the game. It's kind of his thing. But he's a monster. He's huge. So he's 10 months. He just turned 10 months and he's wearing like 18-month clothing, almost 24-month clothing. So we're talking like double where he should be. He is the average size of a 2-year-old right now. And it's killing my back. And so that's the only thing that he's bad at. He is ginormous. He's like 26 pounds, 33 inches. And people that have babies right now are going to be like, whoa. But people that don't are like, yeah, so what? But picking up 26 pounds when you're a 40-year-old woman is a lot. I'm gonna put that out there. But other than that, he's been amazing. And you know, I feel like having him in well, first of all, I of course would get pregnant at the beginning of a global pandemic.
Yeah.
That is just so on brand for me. And in New York City of all places, and it was very intense. But I believe, you know, that everything, you know, the infertility journey for 4 years was really rough. But obviously it led me to being his mom, and his name is Alden, and he's amazing. And Alden means old friend. And we were stuck inside, so we were able to look through a whole baby name book. I'd never heard of the name before. We read the whole thing cover to cover. And I just, you know, the whole time I just felt like I knew him. And right when he came into the world, he like made eye contact with my husband, and just it's like he knew it was him. We were just like, he is like an old friend, and he's really been like that. So that's been very special. And it's really, really great.
I love that. I love that. And I saw you when you were on with the women of fantasy football when they did that whole thing last year during the pandemic, and when it was like everybody was at home and, we were getting bored. So we were all guesting on podcasts, but you were on there and I was like, wow, because it had been a while since so when you were on there, I could tell that some of them didn't know who you were because some of them are super young and weren't around. So a whole new group of people is like, they're finding out about you right now. How has that been? And having people that are like, holy crap, they've heard about you, but they don't know who you are. Like, you're this legend.
I don't know if legend is the word. But really interesting. Before the season, my Twitter account got hacked.
Oh yeah.
And I was with brand new baby. And the last thing I was going to do was try to get through to Twitter to get it. So it got locked. And then I tried to unlock it, but I didn't have like the right thing. And I'd bought a new computer or something, so they weren't recognizing it. I mean, it was just like, issue after issue after issue. And basically I couldn't get the darn thing unlocked. And and then it was going to my Her Fantasy Football email, which is fine. It exists. But when but my Her Fantasy Football email forwards to my Gmail. Okay. So when I clicked on it, it nullified the link because there's something that with the code of being hacked.
Yeah.
So I had to log in to then the Her Fantasy, but I didn't know how to do that. It'd been so long and it was just in this weird thing. So I and then again, I just had a baby. So I could not, like, when you have a baby, like they're up every 2 to 3 hours. You have to feed them. You're delirious. They don't sleep. It's just like,
so we already know you don't sleep. So
right. So then they took away my verification. So my blue check mark went away because I was hacked and I didn't unhack myself quickly enough.
Oh.
So then it became a different level of trying to get in. So I finally got in right before the season. So what's interesting is that I'm not showing as verified. So actually some people have reached out to be like, is this you? Which is really interesting. And then it is intriguing because there will be people that someone made some comment a while ago about me being new or something. And I just was like,
what?
I said, all right, whatever. But yeah, but it's fun. And I love that there's so many new people in the space. And I'm really excited for people. And I when I see that someone's like putting out stats or interesting content, I try to follow them. And I'm really interested in what people are doing. But, I also know that I'm not doing it as intensely as I was in the past. So I'm really kind of trying to listen, which is a really nice place to be too. I also wish we normalized listening.
Yes. I like that. I like that.
Yeah. So that's been kind of nice, and then I also see like the real side of people because I think that for a while, when you're like kind of everywhere, people are just always nice, or pseudo nice. But when then they don't really think you're all that important. They really kind of show their true colors, and then you're like, okay, okay.
I see.
There's also some people that don't talk to me. Like I'll respond or I'll like interact, and then they won't interact back, and I'm like, what did I? And then I'm very intrigued because I'm like, did I say something or do something that really upset them?
Probably not. I don't. Or I'll see that somebody blocked me, and I'm like, have ever had a conversation with this person in my entire life. I don't understand, but whatever.
Oh, I know. I love
like I don't know who you are.
I occasionally get those too.
Yeah,
or
you can't see like in a chain
4 followers or something, and I'm like,
how did she already get to me?
Why are you blocking me? I don't.
But you know what? Whatever. If you don't want me on your timeline, that's fine because you're gonna have to listen to this podcast. It's just gonna have to because somebody will retweet it. One of your followers, one of mine. Sorry, if you have me blocked,
someone's gonna do it.
Somebody's gonna do it. That's just how Twitter is, which is awesome. I love that. Like you were saying that you retweeted the Mark Andrews thing earlier, and I love retweeting people too, and I love getting people to come on the show that are like have like a brand, like an idea that's so much different than what other people are doing right now. So I
Yeah.
do have a lot of like the young guns coming in and like teaching me so much stuff. I'm like, this is super dope. I don't know anything about TikTok or any of that stuff.
Oh,
And
I know.
I had like an
I need to
expert
do
on
this too.
TikTok on the show, and I was just like,
Really? I'm gonna have to
whoa.
listen to that
Oh,
episode. Should
yeah. I met him at the fantasy football convention, expo in Canton. And yeah, I was like, okay, like super dope. I need to learn this stuff. He's got a huge following on TikTok. So the
I'm
Alex
so
Caruso episode.
intrigued. Ooh, okay, Alex Caruso. So I just it's so interesting because I would love to be good at TikTok,
Yeah.
you know? I'd love to be good at a lot of things. I'm
Yeah.
one of those people that actually like I'm very interested and happy doing a variety of things.
Yeah.
Like I said, like I love real estate. I love working in New York City real estate. I've worked in I was an office manager for a tech startup, and that was really interesting. I was executive assistant at Barclays Investment Bank in the mergers and acquisitions department, and was part of the American Airlines merger. And I've done a lot of like things that maybe other people think are boring, but I think are interesting. And I just wish we had more time, to do it all.
Yeah.
And I just like, and I look at things like TikTok, I was like, oh, it'd be so cool. And then I'm like, Brandon, that takes a lot
You
of
don't.
dedication
Yeah.
to learn. But I do wonder how people do these things. How do they
I
make these
do.
videos?
Oh my gosh, it
I
is
can't wait to
crazy to
listen.
me. Yeah, it is crazy to me how, and it's just I'm so excited to see, because there's like all these new things, like I don't know, all these new stuff. They do the Twitch streams and the whatever. There was like Hangouts, or not Hangouts. That's what you guys used to record on for a while.
Yeah,
No, there was like
exactly.
what was it, Clubhouse, that was like big for like 3.4 seconds. And there's been
Yeah.
a lot of stuff, right? But it's really cool to be able to see
Snapchat,
these people. Snapchat, which
just filters.
I don't know. I'm not even on Snapchat. So some guy asked me the other day. So I was talking to this kid at the bar. He's 21 years old, and he had a few drinks, so he's a little sloshed. And he's talking to me about fantasy football, and I was like, hey, I write about it, and I like to talk about it, so let's talk. And then at the end, he's like, well, since you know so much about fantasy football, can I get your Instagram? I'm like, dude, I'm old. Like Instagram, like I have one, but I don't use it.
I don't use it
Instagram.
for fantasy football
And he's like,
content.
okay, well then Facebook, I guess. Really? I tell you I'm old and you're like Facebook. So I'm like, okay, maybe that's where I am now in life.
We're
But
grandparents, basically.
we're getting up there, man. I can't, uh,
I
so you
mean,
had all this. Go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, I mean, whatever, that's fine. You can find me wherever you wanna find
Yeah,
me,
you
but,
find
like,
me. I don't know.
I just also wonder, like, at some like you said, like, things fall through,
Yeah.
right? We don't know
Yeah.
if things are
We
gonna
don't know
stick.
what the next big thing is, or what's
No.
going to stick. I'm surprised Twitter's been around for as long as it has, honestly. And I don't know how much longer. Just kidding. It's been very instrumental for me in fantasy football. Like, I
Same.
don't, and I don't know how I found your podcast, but I'm sure Twitter played a part in it.
I'm sure. It
I'm
was one
sure
of the
it
only
had to
platforms
have.
we used because it makes sense because it's
Yeah.
it's it's a way to share
Right.
links and it's
Hmm.
it's short and it's to the point and it's conversational. Yeah.
So you've got to do all kinds of cool stuff with working in the fantasy football space. I got to meet you at the draft when it was in Arlington. That was super dope.
That was so fun. Yeah. It was so
Uh,
nice to meet you in
it was
person.
so nice. It was so nice. And like, but is there anything that like you've been able to do that was just like blew your mind and like you couldn't even believe that it was happening?
Um,
I'm sure there's been a few
I mean,
really, really
definitely doing
like,
radio at the drafts have been huge.
hmm
Those were really big moments. Um, I think it was really us having our own radio show on Sirius was really big too. Um, it wasn't big financially, but it was big in terms of like how cool. When we went to go talk about our contract, we got booted from the conference room that we were in by Jenny McCarthy.
Oh.
And she was exactly how you would imagine her. She was wearing red leather pants. It was amazing. I was like, yes. It was like middle of the day on a Tuesday, and she's got like red leather
All right,
pants on,
girl.
and she's coming into the conference room. They're like, sorry, you got to go. Jenny's coming. And we're like, oh, okay. So we like
Okay.
left. And when we were walking out, Mary J. Blige was standing and like taking photos in front of like the serious backdrop. And she was wearing the coolest duster jacket with like spikes coming out of her shoulder pads. She looked fierce. And I was like, I'm obsessed. So I would say that definitely serious. Now, whenever I recorded after that, it was after hours and no one was ever there. But when we were signing our contract, that was cool. Oh, and also when we did the DirecTV fantasy show, that was really cool too, because Mark Schlereth was there with his green chili, which I need to order some actually. You can't order it in the winter or in the summer. They won't ship it because of the heat, but we can order it now. Green chili is a very big Colorado thing, and also in Texas. You can it's Southwest.
The like New Mexico, like the Hatch green chilies and stuff is a big thing.
Exactly. Yeah. And you can't get it in New York. There's no place with green chili in all of New York City. There's every other food in the world, but no green chili. It's the weirdest thing. So we literally have it ordered and we bring it into our freezer.
That's cool.
But yeah, so I think those were kind of like the big things. And really the people, you know, I mean, that sounds cheesy, but
not at all.
It's really getting to know people and people that it's fun to speak the same language as other people.
For sure.
And people that you could have maybe nothing else in common with, but you know, you can sit down and talk about how wacko it is that Cordero Patterson is having his breakout season at 30, you know, and everyone can have that conversation, right? And that's fun. I really love that.
I love that too, especially because nobody gets it outside of the fantasy football space. No one gets it. No one gets it. So it is nice to have that. It is nice.
But that's also why we have our family league.
Yeah.
You know, because when we get together as a family, we talk about football.
Yeah.
All the time. And like my mom won our league the first year. And she, you know, she is like, just, you know, fierce. Also, it's like, you know, what do they say it? What are the three things? Blank, taxes, and whatever
death,
every
taxes,
year. Death. Yeah. But I would say it's death, taxes, and my mother beating me in week 1 of fantasy sports. My mother kills me the first time she plays me every year. Murders, like almost double the amount of points. I could have the greatest.
That's fun.
I've had years where that's my only loss of the season is my mother murdering me. And it's just like, it doesn't matter. I see her on the schedule, you know, she's my rival. And I'm like, oh no, not again. And it's every year. And it happened again this year. And I just laughed. I was like, again, Mom, I don't know what your deal is, but you know. So yeah, but it's great to have a common language with people, and that is one of the things that I would encourage people to do if you're on the fence about starting a league with your family or whatever else. Please do. It really brings you together. It's really fun, and then at the holidays you just talk about it, and it's fun, and it's something to talk about that you can do that instead of talking about any other uncomfortable topic that you usually talk about with your family at the holidays. Right? It's actually really pretty great.
Yes, definitely. I just got in a family league with my wife's side of the family. I really want my side of I'm in a league that my sister's in and my wife's in, but I want a family league with like my dad and all that. So I'll have to hit you up with some advice on how to get that running smoothly because my family. We'll see. So Brandon, I'm gonna go ahead and just let you go ahead, tell everybody where they can find you and what you got going on right now.
Sure. So I am currently on a podcast and doing the mailbag for The Athletic Fantasy Sports. You can go to theathletic.com. You can follow me on Twitter at Brandon, her FFB. Anywhere else on social media, I'm kind of more real estate-y and personal, but if you want to see my babies or whatever, you can. Babies. One baby. He's huge, so he's kind of like 2. Yeah, you can follow on Instagram or whatever, but truly Twitter is kind of where it's at for me. And yeah, and Her Fantasy Football was the podcast that I have my two sisters, and yeah, so you never know. Someday, if we're all in the same time zone again,
At
maybe
least a
we do it again.
reunion. At least a
We could do
reunion
it.
episode.
We should do one reunion episode.
And you
Yeah,
guys can play clips back, and you guys can hear what you guys had to say in 2016 or whatever. So I'm just saying.
And what's really interesting is that I really kind of went on to do more fantasy sports with really large names and things like that. But my sisters truly are two of the best fantasy minds that I worked with for sure. And they made such great calls and did such hard work, and they were right a lot. And it was truly a pleasure. And also I'm just glad it also this brought me to you, Kacey, and you do a great job, and you've really been kicking Fanny, and I'm sorry you've really gotten into it since I and my sisters kind of started stepping out, but we are really happy for you. And I can say that from Ashley and Courtney as well, because we have discussed it at many a holiday where we're also talking about fantasy football. So we're very happy for you. And I'm just happy that I was able to be here. And thank you for having me and for being so awesome and supportive. And I hope to be even a fraction of that for you. I really do. So always sending you good vibes.
Thank you so much. And let your sisters know that I said hello, and that, I really miss all their content too. So,
I will.
Maybe when you guys have a reunion, I can pop in for a little bit and say hi.
Our favorite listener? Yes, that would be amazing.
That's me. Oh, thank you so much again. I am so happy that you could come on. I know we had I had technical difficulties at the beginning, but thank you for working with me on that and just sticking around and answering all the questions and being awesome.
It's going to be amazing. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. All right, guys. Appreciate you guys listening to this one, and make sure that you stay rad.